This is the BBC.
Dear brothers and sisters, all are welcome here at the Confessions podcast, whether saint or sinner.
Hello and welcome to the Confessions podcast from the BBC, where every day is like Christmas.
What?
Sprouts.
Hey everybody. Special hello to all our new subscribers who are wondering what on earth is going on.
Who think they've got the wrong one.
It is the February edition. It's all right. If you've got no idea how you have this podcast on your device, by the way, check with your loved ones or friends or people you've bumped into in the street, because they owe you a Radio 2 bumper sticker, because there are incentives. Mm-hmm. If you didn't know, this is where all the sinful members of the Radio 2 audience, which is pretty much everybody, gets in one place to tell their tales of deception, debauchery and deceit, and they try and get some dispensation from Sister Bobby, who never forgives, and Brother Matt, who basically forgives anyone unless you're an art student or you wear a beret or in any way annoying, or practical jokers.
Yeah, practical jokers.
Or good-looking.
Good-looking men particularly.
Doesn't it drive you crazy?
Yeah.
This week's collection of shameful stories. Lanky Frankie's Can You Miss It? Yes, you can. Martin the Karate Kid's confession, Papa's got a brand new kick bag. Mila, or possibly Mia's faux pas, Let's Face the Music and France.
Yes, that is still very good.
I still like that one. Plus, we've unearthed another classic confession from the crypt, a tale from years gone by, specially requested by you. But we're going to start this week's podcast with Terry's tale, Pencil Full of Dread.
Simon Mayo's Confessions podcast. Please be seated.
Dear Father Simon and the Fellowship of Fairness and Forgiveness, my confession dates back some 19 years to when I was a young and carefree 8-year-old in primary school, okay? Primary 4 of the local Bash Street Academy. That's where I am. We're partway through the school year when World Book Day approached, and in assembly one Friday, the head teacher announced a drawing competition involving the whole school. Each of the 350-odd pupils were given an A4 sheet of paper with a rectangle taking up 3/4 of the page. Inside of this rectangle, we were instructed to come up with an image that, if chosen, would be printed and made into bookmarks in celebration of World Book Day.
Wow.
To say I was excited was an understatement. I love to draw, said Terry, and what 8-year-old doesn't want a bit of healthy competition between them and every other pupil in the school? I raced home that day, ran up to my bedroom, took out some scrap sheets of paper on which to practice, grabbed my best pencil, and, well, sort of nothing really. I hadn't the foggiest idea what I was going to draw. Inspiration had completely abandoned me, and I just sort of scribbled aimlessly. I pondered this dilemma out loud at the dinner table that night, and I needed a friendly character to engage the judges. That's what I was trying to think of. The judges were actually just the Bash Street members of staff, but, you know, you've got to impress them anyway. And I needed a catchy slogan. It was at this point that my mum piped up, "Why don't you draw an owl, like the one on your bedtime storybook?" Well, the owl in question was sitting on a branch with little half-moon spectacles somehow resting on his beak, holding a book of bedtime stories in front of 3 baby owls. As I was still suffering from designer's block, I reluctantly agreed. After all, there was nothing in the rules explicitly saying that we were forbidden from plagiarising pre-existing storytime characters. I set to work, and my first practice attempt was pretty abysmal. And my second practice attempt was even worse. But come the closing date for entries, I had a fair bid for submission to the contest. I even had the all-important catchy slogan, which was, "At Bash Street, any time is story time." What do you think of that as a slogan? Does that work?
I think
It's a slogan.
a lovely idea.
Yeah.
But I think
in
it's
practice, maybe not.
Can we have a story? No, it's maths.
It's not.
Anyway, that was the slogan that I came up with, said Terry. A week or so after the entries were collected, we had a school assembly. The head teacher strode forward, clutching half a dozen sheets of paper. Did my eyes deceive me? Was that my owl in amongst the select few in her hands? She read out the names of the winners in ascending order, holding each entry aloft as she did so. An older boy in primary 6 was 4th. My best friend Sarah was 3rd. This was getting serious now. I could see my owl still in her pile of papers, but she hadn't called my name. Had my dream come true? Had I actually, literally, totally won? My heart skipped a beat when she read out the name of the second place winner. "I think I've come first," I whispered to the girl sitting next to me. Just like that, my dream became a reality. To rapturous applause, I was invited to the front for a handshake and a photograph. But the real prize was still to come. My design, from then on affectionately known as Barney Owl, was printed onto hundreds of bookmarks, with other pupils in the school receiving one each. I was the talk of the school, and older pupils I didn't even know were giving me congratulations in the corridor. My teacher, Mrs. Howler, gave me 10 extra stamps on my chart that week. That's how good I was. It meant I was definitely in line to get a polycop. I was definitely in line to get a lollipop on Friday. What a life we were living. And to my surprise, whilst on my way back from the toilet about a week later, the head teacher bumped into me in the corridor, and I was invited into her office, where I got to choose a book all of my own as an extra prize. Could life get any better? Sometime later, after the initial hubbub had subsided, I was met with a dizzying sight. There in the media room of the infant primary section, a media room, was a 7-foot tall, very animated and equally terrifying Barney Owl. Yes, 7 foot tall. Not only had the school embraced my catchy slogan of any time being story time, which is clearly not true, but they'd also purchased a large owl costume and roped someone in, presumably the janitor, Mr. Teasdale, to wear it for the whole school, particularly primaries 1, 2 and 3. This was getting a little out of hand. And I don't think Mr. Teasdale liked me either. Not least because they were still blissfully unaware that I had plagiarised the idea for the Friendly Owl from my storybook, but that they were equally and more importantly unaware that, actually, my mum had drawn the whole thing in the first place. You see, Father Simon, not only were my first 2 attempts terrible, but every single attempt following that was terrible as well. My mum, just in passing, and as parents tend to, said, "Here, I'll have a go." And she drew a beautiful version of the owl I'd come to love and detest in equal measure. She even came up with a catchy slogan. My entire input was assisting with the colouring in. It's all I did. So the forgiveness is clearly not from the teachers, who I so wickedly deceived, because I didn't actually get the bonus lollipop that week, thanks to a girl who'd done amazingly in her arithmetic. Probably got her dad to do it. Nor do I seek forgiveness from my best friend Sarah, who was one of the runners-up. I told this very tale to her just a few years ago, and she in turn confessed that her dad had drawn the entry. The entire thing was a farce. Now I seek forgiveness from Primary 1, 2 and 3, who had to be subjected to the terrifying ordeal of being made to read by a gigantic, monstrous, crazed owl, who was really Mr. Teasdale, and also whoever the poor soul who was Mr. Teasdale had to dress up as the crazed creature. No one ever forgave me as far as that was. Imagine being taught to read by a 7-foot monster owl. It might put you off reading. Maybe that's the problem with some people reading. I was taught to read by an owl, and therefore I've never picked up a book since. There are many, many stories like this of homework, which I think has been done by parents. Let's see what Sister Bobby makes of that.
I think in his circumstances, it's I can see a road to forgiveness because of this. Is basically it was the whole school. So you're pitching a kind of little ones and against the older ones. So I don't think the rules are very fair. It's not they had different stages. So obviously the best artist is going to win. So I think if you've got a kind of 4-year-old or 5-year-old and they've got to go up against the 11-year-old, that doesn't seem to be very fair, does it?
Sob, are you going to forgive?
I just think because I think the rules are not very fair. I don't think it's very even. I don't think it helps anyone. So basically, best parent wins, I think, gets involved here. So in this case, I will forgive the cheating.
All's fair in love and war.
But also, it was still your ideas. You don't have to be the best artist to have the best artistic ideas, do you?
Nigel.
Generally.
Well, yeah, I'm
No, you don't,
yo-yoing.
Matt.
I'm yo-yoing on this one, not for a change. I mean, it's justification from Sarah. She sought that. I didn't agree with that. That sounds like a David Williams novel, doesn't it? But I think really the reason I'm going to forgive is that anyone who has a mother with a voice that deep, I'll give it a go. Yeah, then they have to be forgiven. She put the fear of God into me.
I'm just basking in the success of all my accents from yesterday, and so I'm just on a roll. There's no voice I can't achieve today. That's
Really.
Yes, our own Mike Yarwood.
There's nothing wrong with a bit of aimless scribbling. And Terry, well done, and Simon for the accent. You're forgiven.
Thank you very much indeed. Matthew.
I'm sure I speak for the nation when I say there's only one thing worse than other kids, and that's the parents of other kids. And we all know in school that little Timmy, when he's done his collage, that's not little Timmy's work. That's very much chartered surveyor and part-time artist Miriam, who has done Timmy's work. So, frankly, I'm going to forgive, because everyone's up to it. They're all up to it, apart from me, obviously. obviously very much playing by the rules.
The Confessions Podcast.
Father Simon and the judicial juggernaut. I need to apologise to Matt because it's a little FA Cuppy.
Well, that was a great result for West Brom. Well done to them. I think we all agree.
But not in an off-putting way, Bobby. Not in a I haven't got a clue what you're talking about kind of way.
Are you talking about me? I know Manchester United play Yeovil at the weekend.
Yes.
I knew
In
that.
the early 1980s, Lanky Frankie says, I was a semi-professional footballer playing in the lower leagues around Reading. If you ask my teammates to describe, they'd probably say I tackled like Gary Lineker.
In other words, didn't.
I shot like Norman Hunter.
In other words, didn't.
However, being 6'4" tall, I was a Mark Hateley-like figure who won everything in the air.
Mark Hateley, rather good.
So very tall.
and very good at heading.
Thank you for that.
It's like with subtitles,
Yes.
this one. In August 1981, I joined a new team with ambitions of playing in the FA Cup first round. Our team had a new coach, Mad Harry, who came with a hard man reputation. Mad Harry had played for Millwall and Leyton Orient. No surprise. And he told us on day one that we were too soft and definitely uncommitted. We would therefore be training like no one had ever trained before, and anyone who lacked commitment would be dropped to the reserves. The season started well. We won all our qualifying and preliminary matches for the FA Cup and were top of the league. Mad Harry was unstoppable. He beasted us in training and had iron discipline, and we went from being rubbish rovers to a win machine. Away from the pitch, my brother Paul was getting married in a few months' time, and I was going to be best man. But, you know the thing, the wedding was set for the day of the last qualifying round of the Cup, and I had a dilemma. I couldn't ask to miss the match if we got that far, but also I couldn't let my brother down. So I hatched a cunning plan, which, like me, was simple. As football fans may know, if you get 4 yellow cards over a run of matches, you then get... That's for a booking, Bobby.
Is
if
it?
you misbehaviour,
Okay, not a red card, a yellow card.
the red card will come after the yellow card.
Okay.
If you get 4 yellow cards over a run of matches, you would then get suspended for the next match. It was so simple. During late August and early September, I collected the first 2 for complaining about offside decisions. I got my 3rd yellow card for complaining about a disallowed goal. Thanks to a few match call-offs, it was suddenly a week before the wedding, and I was still 1 yellow card short of a suspension, which I was going to need if I was going to be best man. So the next game was my last chance to get booked. I got to the ground and saw that the referee was a guy we knew affectionately as Trigger. Now, Trigger was a stickler for the laws of the game and had a reputation for being quick to issue cards. This was going to be a doddle to get a yellow card, I thought. As it turned out, Trigger was superb on that day. He didn't make any wrong decisions against us. He allowed our 3 goals, and in an unusually good mood. 75 minutes in, he'd given the other side 3 yellow cards, none to us. Nothing I'd tried so far had worked. When I complained about tackles, he just smiled. So by now, I was getting desperate. 10 minutes to go, I blatantly controlled the ball with my arm, but he somehow missed it. They need a bit of video technology.
Yeah.
I think, there. A few minutes later, I swore at a linesman. Don't try that at home, kids.
No.
Trigger didn't hear it. Things weren't going my way. I could not get booked for love or money. 3 minutes to go. The ball was loose, and their midfielder, Chopper Chalmers,
Chopper Chalmers?
Yeah, got possession.
Judith.
I threw myself into a studs-up tackle, and the next thing, there was a loud crack, a scream, and an outbreak of handbags. That's it, son, you're off, says Trigger, waving the red card vigorously before calling the trainer on. He showed 6 more cards in the argy-bargy that followed this. I left the pitch. But to my shame, Father Simon, I wasn't the one being sent off. I was actually being carried off with my right leg shattered. It was me that missed I missed the match I wanted to miss, all right, but several others to boot. In fact, says Lanky Frankie, I never played football again, ever.
Me.
And Chopper Chalmers was banned for 6 weeks for what was perceived as the worst tackle that Trigger had ever seen. So therefore, this didn't quite work out the way I was expecting, but clearly forgiveness from many people, not from my teammates who didn't even qualify for the FA Cup, useless. I also don't seek forgiveness from Mad Barry, who held me up as an example of the commitment he wanted from his players. Instead, I seek forgiveness from my brother Paul, as I was unable to be his best man, given that I was in hospital for 3 months.
3 months?
I also seek forgiveness to everyone at the Royal Berkshire Hospital Reading who looked after me when my injury could have been avoided. Finally, the person I really need forgiveness from is Chopper Chalmers, because not only did he get a lengthy ban for something that wasn't his fault, but because my then girlfriend attacked him in the car park with a with a handbag and an umbrella while screaming obscenities at him. Obviously, don't do that. We don't encourage that. Hope you can forgive me. I only wanted to miss one football match, but was scared to ask. You see, you can't. You would think it was a very straightforward plan. It must be the easiest thing in the world to get booked in a match. Apparently not. If Trigger is in charge and Trigger's having a good day, but there comes Chopper Chalmers. He's the one who suffered, apart from our confessee Lanky Frankie, who never played football again. Sister Bobby.
Careful what you wish for, eh? It's really sad because I understand the conflict of interest. There's many a wedding that I don't turn up at because they booked it in August and I'm working in August, always. And so I understand when you get caught out and you go, I really cannot do this, but I needed to do both things. So I understand the conflict. However, I don't understand why it's still Chopper's fault, whether you're trying to get forgiveness from him. I still don't work that out.
The referee obviously saw it in the tangle. He obviously saw it as Chopper's fault, where clearly it wasn't his fault. So it was a misunderstanding.
But surely what Lanky Frankie had to do was just own up to the fact this wasn't my... He could have... Look, he got the...
Lanky Frankie wasn't capable of speech, I wouldn't think.
Okay, well, he could have fixed it after the fact. So that's why you're not forgiven in the end, but I forgive you what you were trying to do, because it's hard. But the thing is, really, ask, how bad can it be? Ask for the day off. Get replaced by someone better.
Very dangerous policy.
Yes. Well, I love this confession, not least for the names. Lanky Frankie and Chopper Chalmers and Trigger and Mad Harry.
Harry, the ref.
Then became Mad Barry. Then back to Mad Harry again. And the cameo from the girlfriend from Lanky Frankie. Excellent stuff. I seem to remember former England captain David Beckham doing this, knowing that he was one booking away from a suspension before a major tournament. He deliberately, and he'd admitted it afterwards, picked up a yellow card that he didn't need to pick up just so that he'd get his suspension in early. So really, you're following former England captain David Beckham. So what's wrong with that? So definitely forgiven.
Simon Mayo's Confessions Podcast.
That was Lanky Frankie's fable. Can you miss it? Yes, you can. Still to come, the confession which almost turned into a play. But can you guess which of my incredible repertoire of accents I'm trying to do here? I would like one of the old watermelon drinks. Watermelon, please.
Watermelon.
It was
So funny.
The problem was it was a juxtaposition of two very difficult accents
that you had to get right.
And I got neither right, but one disguised the other. Anyway, let's rush straight over and have a look at the parish notice board. Quite a few notices this week, but the most important one is for those of the parish who are living with one of those voice-controlled personal assistants. Hey, Alexa, what time is it? That kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, very useful.
Yeah.
You see, from this week, these voice-controlled personal assistants have been updated, so they can now play thousands of podcasts and catch-up programmes from across UK radio. But you only really need to play one, and that is this one. If you want to listen to a specific show, you can ask for it by date, and you can also say back to hear the previous edition or next to hear the following one, and then you have a continuous loop of confessions. No longer are you limited to listening to this very podcast on your computer, smartphone or MP3 player, and before long we'll even be in your hoovers or kettle. And possibly we might be in your fridge and your freezer, and we might be in your bedside table.
All right. It's not in any way creepy.
Because we know where you live.
Oh dear.
I could be outside by your bins.
It's that voice again.
Just waiting.
Yeah.
This is actually my real...
Is it really? Yeah.
Anyway, what a newfangled thing that is. Anyway, what have you got there, Bobby?
Samantha Matthews, deep in the Brecon Beacons, emailed from Pengenford to say, Dear Father Mayo and the Holy Collective, I have recently introduced my sheep to the Confessions podcast, and it's fair to say they're extremely impressed, as you can see from the pictures which you have there, Simon.
Oh, yes.
Which is clearly, I mean, it's almost Photoshop, but not. So it's a black sheep looking very, very impressed.
Yes.
And a smartphone being held close to one of the sheep's ears with clearly the Confessions podcast up on the screen.
Well, initially they were doubtful, but they fully embraced the spirit of the podcast and very much enjoy casting judgment on human transgressions. Now, Margot is the Black Welsh Mountain, which I think you just held up there, Simon. She tends to side with the stricter approach of Sister Bobby, myself. Connie the Shetland sheep has a live and let live attitude that perfectly aligns with Matt's forgive absolutely anything standpoint, while Delilah the Jacob sheep just likes amusing accents. I think she's the one with the horns, by the way.
Yeah, but why? Why, Delilah? I mean, that's...
Oh,
dear.
Dear. I confess that I forced the podcast on these poor innocent lambs, so as compensation for their initiation into the dastardly ways of humankind, could we please have a couple of car stickers from your surplus stock?
Yes.
One for my car and one for the sheep trailer, so the girls can advertise their superior taste in radio listening.
We'll send you 20 or so you can line
No,
your
we
sheep.
won't.
No, we won't.
We're not sending 20.
Just want two. Samantha just wants two.
Two
One
will
for
be
her.
fine. Matt, you've got a notice there from the notice board. What have you noticed?
Well, Wendy emailed in to say, Dear Father Simon and the team, could you please wish Mr. Happy, a.k.a. Malcolm, a very happy 60th birthday?
Is Malcolm really?
Yeah, well, and of course his owner, my husband Pete. P.S. Is this a good time to confess to him that the digital radio Simon Mayo sent him was actually from me? He nearly had heart failure when I said millions of listeners would have heard his story about the wasp. We all remember that.
Yes, we do.
And it appeared to soften the blow. There's also a new notice here for the Parish Running Club. This week's run is cancelled due to our head coach, Steve Cram, worrying that he might be embarrassed by someone being faster than him. This stems from his mini confession from Monday's show, which, if you missed it, you can hear right now.
Can I do a little quick confession?
Yeah, sure, yeah, absolutely.
I was out running near Regent's Park, or around the edge of Regent's Park in London before Christmas, dark night, and I shuffle along these days, Simon. I'm not as quick as I used to be. Yeah. And I was on one side of the road, another guy appeared on the other side of the road with a backpack on, was obviously tootling along quite nicely, and I thought, oh, he's going a bit quick. And I thought, as you do, you always speed up a little bit, and he's on the other side of the road, he hadn't spotted me. And then after about 100 yards, I thought, no, he's going a bit quick. And I started to slow down, but then he crossed onto my side, just at the time when I had to stop. Both of us had to stop as we came to a junction. Yeah. And he looked at me, and he did what we've just said, and he went, hello. And I went, all right, mate, yeah, hello. We're both running. And then he went, you're Steve Cram, aren't you? I thought, oh, no.
Here we go.
And then the car pulled away, and we had to start running, and I had a choice, should I run with him because he was going too fast, or try and... Well, of course, I had to, so I did. And after about half a mile of him chatting to me and me chatting to him, I decided that he was indeed going too fast. I think he runs this route. Whoever you are, mate, I think you said you run it 8 miles home every night from work. Brilliant, well done. But when I said to you, I've got to turn off right here, that was a lie. It was only because I couldn't keep up with you. So when I turned off to the right... you were going way too fast for me.
The one and only Steve Cram, always a favourite, and he also buy you a beer if you ever find him.
Yes, he definitely will.
In a bar in Beijing. Another colourful look through the parish notice board concludes. Now, time for the section of the podcast where we publicly shame those confessors whose stories are so shameful that they're just not fit for mainstream radio. But we can snigger about on the podcast. Now, I did mention on the show, there are a growing number of confessions which are too bad even for this
Even
section.
for this? Really?
So I don't know what we do. Well, I know we shred them, but I mean, I don't know if there's anything else we can be doing with them. Rob's tale of crashing at a friend's house after a night down the pub ends with him desperately needing a wee. But given that the house's only toilet was an ensuite in his friend's bedroom, and said friend was in there with a friend he'd met down the pub...
Okay.
Rob was faced with a dilemma, but a nearby yucca plant was not the answer, Rob.
Because, my guess is it's not that absorbent.
It would smell for ages.
Yes, it would.
It would kill the yucca.
Kill the yucca? You're right, okay.
Just go outside.
Yeah.
I'd have thought. We also can't condone Martin's story about having his date spoiled by his over-eager Cocker Spaniel. Are we supposed to feel sorry that your possible relationship was curtailed by your dog sending your date's daughter's pet rabbit to the great meadow in the sky?
Oh, dear. Mind you, circle of life, I
think we've withheld quite a lot from that story.
Well, I think we all know what's happened.
On the grounds of sheer cruelty, we also can't allow Amanda's confession. Just because you were bored at your Saturday job in the chemist, Amanda, there was no reason to hide a regular customer's order and pretend it was out of stock. The order in question was charcoal biscuits for extreme flatulence.
That's not on, is
And
it?
apparently,
It's really not. No,
the man left the store pale and shaking, muttering, "My wife's going to kill me." I didn't even know that you could eat charcoal biscuits for extreme flatulence.
Is that a...
Well, we all live and learn, don't
Do
we?
we?
Maybe we can get Nigel to make some and we can test them.
I suppose you could do a duvet razor, and then we could see
Yes.
how that works out.
What a
Well,
fabulous...
we're learning something.
Yes, yeah.
Lord Reith would love this podcast.
Public service.
And perhaps our most shocking... I don't even know I can do this. Most shocking confession of the week comes from Kate. Tells us about an incident from her student nurse days. Nurses and doctors always the worst. When realising she'd left an elderly female patient's expensive talcum powder back in the bathroom, proceeded to use hospital dusting powder instead. It was only when the powder didn't rub in as expected and an overwhelming chemical smell became present that Kate realised she'd used bath scouring powder
Oh, my goodness.
by mistake. And it is for those reasons that we
Yes.
cannot laugh, be entertained,
No.
be amused in any way, just to be profoundly shocked, because none of these are okay, particularly you, Kate. Ask yourself, as you've written, when you, even perhaps before you start writing email, is it appropriate? Is this really appropriate?
Really, is it?
Is it really appropriate? If it is, then send it. And if it isn't, send it anyway. And we'll see what happens. Confessions@bbc.co.uk. The good news for the purists is that we have a mini U-rated confession to counter all this filth. This was sent in by Hector Russell from Launceston in Tasmania in Australia. So although it's Launceston in the UK version, it could well be Launceston if it's
Could be,
Australia.
yeah.
So who's to say? Anyway, Hector has called his confession the Snack Cat. Okay, so this is...
Go on.
And the mini U-rated confession is just for primary school and under, nursery ideally. Dear Father Simon, it was dinner time and my cat, Vimes, was interested in my lettuce. So I gave him 4 pieces and he ate it. So Mum and Dad think I ate the lettuce, but actually it was Vimes the cat. Please forgive me. From Hector, aged 8. P.S. Where do you broadcast? Because I'm going to London. Bye.
Bye!
Well, we're in London too, actually,
Yes.
Hector. So see if you can find us.
Right.
Surely he can come in for a
Suitably
cup of tea
vague.
and bring Mummy and Daddy.
Well,
I mean, he's sent in that lovely
do you know,
confession.
that's absolutely right. I'm led by your moral compass always.
I think that's...
So if you get in touch with us, Hector, because you have successfully performed our U-rated confession.
Yes.
If you get in touch and it's all legitimate and you pass all the tests,
Because we don't let anyone in.
don't let any riffraff in, and it's particularly tough for colonial commoners.
Yes.
Then if you get in touch, we'll see what we can do.
Yeah.
If it's not too late, but get in touch with us at this address, and our top production team will give you a 5-star treatment.
Yes,
You won't. There will be no 5-star treatment.
Do we forgive Hector?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because the cat obviously liked the lettuce, and I think that's okay. Thing is, though, in future, eat your greens, but I'll let you off for now.
Thank you. For those only listening to the podcast for car sticker news, here's the part you've been waiting for. Unfortunately, our surplus stock is starting to deplete as more and more of you cotton on to how you get your hands on one of these lovely, beautiful items. But we still do have a few thousand, which we generously send you. Hurry, hurry.
Yes.
You can get another, if you can get another member of your family to subscribe to the podcast, photographic proof, please, including yourself in the picture and your address. It doesn't matter if they're, if they volunteered, just if you've nicked their phone and you want to subscribe them and then give them their phone back, obviously. Confessions@bbc.co.uk, or if you're the first to tweet the end of podcast code word, which you'll hear at the end of the podcast, that has been pointed out to me by child 3 at home. A lot of people are just going to fast forward to the end of the podcast first, hear that phrase, then tweet that and get the sticker. So, that's how you have to play this game.
Well, yeah, that's how you do it.
Speaking of, this is how we do it. Montel Jordan, we played that this week. Speaking of which, Lottie, Heidi, Lucy, Matthew, many more. Stickers will be with you soon. But back to the confessions from this week, where we revisit Martin the Karate Kid's confession. Papa's got a brand new kick bag.
The Confessions Podcast.
Dear Father Simon and the esteemed members of the Forgiving Council, I lay prostrate before you and beg your forgiveness for our most horrid sin I committed as a young man. The story goes back to 1978 when I was 21 and I was a karate enthusiast, attending my classes with enthusiasm and vigour. I had problems with my kicks. however, and wanted to improve my technique and power. My instructor suggested that I should get myself a kick bag and practice daily, and that if I did this, my kicking would improve tremendously. I did as he suggested and got a brand new kick bag. Papa's got a brand new kick bag. But once I got home, I realised I needed somewhere to hang it. Might have occurred to you before, Martin. Now, Simon, I lived in an old upper tenement flat with 2 bedrooms, one of which I used as a home gym where I kept my weights and so on. So where better to hang my kick bag, I thought, and I decided to hang it from one of the joists from the ceiling above. Now, not being very DIY savvy, I started to tap on the ceiling trying to locate the wooden joist in order to screw a bracket into it and hang the bag. But try as I might, I couldn't locate any joist. Then I had a brainwave. If I climbed into the loft, I could tap a small nail beside the joist into the ceiling below, and when I climbed down and re-entered the room, I could view where the small nail had appeared. I can't think of anything that's going to go wrong here, can you? Had appeared in the ceiling, meaning it would be a simple matter of locating the joist. I got into the loft with my trusty hammer and a little wire nail, gently tapped it into the floor of the loft beside the middle joist, directly below my spare room. I then climbed down, entered the room and scanned the ceiling for the protrusion of said nail. I was dismayed and confused to find no evidence of the nail at all.
Oh.
Then I had a thought. The nail was obviously too short to go through the floor. I've said this confession now takes a certain Tom and Jerry approach to life. The nail was obviously too short to go through the floor of the loft and into the ceiling below. How can I solve this? I know, a longer nail.
Of course.
So I then got a 6-inch nail, climbed back into the loft and drove the second nail home. Voila. I returned to the room and again scanned the ceiling for the protrusion, but nothing. No sign of it at all. I then thought that maybe I'd got my measurements wrong, so I tried another joist, and then another, all to no avail. By this time I was getting rather angry that I couldn't pinpoint a joist. With my anger increasing and common sense decreasing in equal measure, I decided that rash measures were called for. I got a 3-foot cane, drilled a hole beside the offending joist and drove the cane through. Surely now I would locate the joist. Down into the room again, ceiling scanned for gain nothing. You'd have thought by now Martin might have realised what was going on. By now, I was in such a rage and refusing to be beaten.
I'm going to do another one.
I got a 6-foot piece of copper pipe.
Of course.
Because I couldn't find anything else.
6 foot.
I got back into the loft and I drove the wretched pipe through the wretched ceiling right up to the hilt in the belief that finally I would triumph. Jumping back down and back into the room, I was gutted not to see the copper pipe hanging through the ceiling, and I reluctantly had to admit defeat, confused and bewildered that the house was playing tricks on me. Maybe it was haunted. Maybe there was a ghost. Maybe there were
That's
spirits.
one explanation.
Maybe there were pixies.
Yeah.
Just before noon, the day after my DIY exploits, I heard a knock on the door, and it's my next-door neighbour, Jack.
Oh, I wonder what
Jack's
could be going on there.
Jack's about 60, lived with his mum, Muriel, who was in her early 80s. Both were lovely, wonderful and chatty people whenever you saw them, although that wasn't very often. They were both retired and enjoyed a rather relaxing life, which included a lie-in more often than not.
Yep.
Standing at my door, Jack looked as if he'd just woken up, half-dressed in his trousers, vest and braces. "Martin," he began, "have you had any workmen in your house the last few days?" "Yes," I replied, "the gas company have been to fit a new gas fire," which was actually true. "Oh," he says, "come and look at this." Jack led me into his house and up into a bedroom, and to my horror I looked up at the ceiling to see several holes. A 3-inch nail, a 6-inch nail, a gardening cane and a 6-foot length of copper piping. Majestically protruding down from his ceiling. My horror grew to epic proportions as I looked down the length of the tube to find that the end of it was positioned about 2 inches from Muriel's left eye as she lay on her bed asleep, with half the ceiling plaster on the bed around her. Had she woken with a start, she might have impaled herself on my copper piping. Imagine that, Father. No, I wouldn't.
No.
Jack, now incandescent with anger, said he was going to sue the gas company for destroying his house and endangering his old mother. I nodded in agreement. Once he'd settled down, I offered to go into his loft and remove the offending protrusions, and he was most grateful for my assistance. I did remove all my DIY from John's ceiling, Father Simon. I never confessed my sin to him or Muriel when she eventually surfaced. And for that I've carried all my guilt all these years. Seek forgiveness for my sin, and although Jack and Muriel are no longer with us, and there is no next of kin, perhaps you could intercede on my behalf. As for the gas company, don't waste your breath. They went down the tube years ago.
Okay.
Because I think somebody sued them.
Right.
Anyway, so you would have thought, Martin the Karate Kid, that by the time you'd put a 6-foot piece of copper through the ceiling, you might have thought, maybe I've got the wrong room, and maybe it's not my house. Anyway, Sister Bobby.
Yeah, big Egypt. Martin, I mean, the theory's right. I mean, it did work in theory, but of course, always measure twice, cut once. That's the rule, isn't it? So if you'd have measured the room and thought where you were, also it was a shared loft that maybe you hadn't thought of. That's the real thing. But the thing that really worries me, I can forgive you all your sins for just having a go, and I love anyone that just has a go, even because I have ruined many a DIY project, I can tell you. But
You don't want him to have a go, though, do you?
well, the thing is he didn't fix it for them. So what he should have said to Jack is, Jack, I'm really sorry. Even if he blamed the gas company, he said, look, it's my fault because they were in doing...
Employ a professional.
No, I will fix this for you. And that's what I'm against. So, Martin, because you didn't fix it for them, then I do not forgive you.
So, I mean, can I be the only one who's thinking of that Only Fools and Horses sketch involving the chandelier right now? Because that's definitely forefront of my mind. How many things in life are complicated by having a shared loft? What's the point of shared lofts? You want to have the separate... I'm living in a separate house. I'd like a separate loft. Thanks very much. So, really, is it really Martin's fault? Is it not the design of the house who decided I'm going to have a shared loft here? I think we probably all know the answer there. So, yes, I'm going to forgive.
This is the place where penitents seek our pardon for their sins. Simon Mayo's Confessions Podcast.
Father Simon in the Gallery of Hope. Look at
Wow,
you. Would you
Gallery
look
of
at you?
Hope.
Gallery.
Yeah.
How beautiful that is. First of all, I should say, I was a big fan of Vanessa Paradis. And Jola
Yeah.
Taxi was a favourite song of mine back in the day. I've no doubt that these two things were the guiding force behind what I'm about to confess. The night this all started, I was in a nightclub, away from my hometown. My mate Jackie had just bought a new car and we fancied a night out. It was serendipitous timing that we ended up getting doled up to the nines and heading off to get our groove on. With a bunch of professional footballers and other movers and shakers, we were off with the yuppie set, with our shoulder pads and our kitten heels.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I should add at this point that Jackie and I were recently both heartbroken by our men, and we might just have been a little bit bitter. I'm not using this as an excuse, it was just a fact. For this reason, neither of us were looking out for replacement idiots. Or smelly boys, as we called them. We were happily out to dance and be merry.
Okay.
Do they want replacement idiots?
No.
No, they don't. Do they want smelly boys?
I'm sure many
No,
people
they don't.
want replacement idiots, but anyway, yeah.
An hour or so into our evening, a couple of very nice-looking men came over and asked if we wanted a drink. The one that leant over to me had a gorgeous Eddie Murphy smile and a Samuel L. Jackson voice. Oh, please.
Oh, yes. Well, I'm intrigued to hear his voice
He,
there.
he was tempting, but we made a pact not to speak to smelly boys. So he says,
Yes.
so,
Go on.
baby,
Oh,
what can I... What,
I'm going to have to turn away.
He's actually doing it.
well, what can I get you?
Okay.
He purred in his silky smooth tones. See?
Yeah, that was
How
very,
silky smooth was that?
very silky.
As quick as a flash, I replied, and much to Jackie's horror, 2020 watermelon, please. Now, I had to check this, but a 2020 watermelon was a fruity Alco pop, which was all the rage.
Oh, right.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
You might see them in the
Like
park.
a hooch. Like a
Yeah,
hooch,
exactly like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you might wonder why Jackie looked so horrified. It wasn't actually the fact that I was talking to one of the smelly boys, but what I failed to be able to type was the fact that I did this in a very, very thick, outrageous French accent. So that actually it sounded more like,
Yeah.
I would like a 2020...
What? No, have another run at that.
Okay.
What was that?
I would like one of your watermelon drinks.
Watermelon.
Watermelon, please. So Loverboy says, oh, girl, you're a Frenchie? You're a Frenchie? I love your accent. And Eddie Murphy's mouth, we'll call him Randy. I just smiled sweetly, took his drink and tried to ignore him. Meanwhile, Randy's friend was a little sweet to my friend Jackie. Girl, you're a Frenchie too? She looked at me horrified. We? She replied.
Of course.
This, instead of being a fleeting exchange, seemed to have piqued their interest in us, and the smelly boys, having bought us our drinks, attempted to hang around. We didn't speak much, but that didn't matter. It was loud and dark, and we danced on a very busy dance floor, me drinking my watermelon bottle with a straw, and Jackie following me around with her Coca-Cola. We knew how to live. Just before the lights went up and the traditional end-of-the-night song, New York, New York, started playing, we went to leave. We were halfway across the car park when Randy came running up behind us. "Hey, Frenchie!" he shouted. "Hey, Frenchie!" How close am I, would you say?
Very, yeah.
It took a minute for me to realise that he was calling me, and then it struck me. I was out in the open, no music to save me, and I had to converse with this quite gorgeous man. The drink was working, and he was, to be honest, a bit of a dish. So I reply,
Yeah.
"I'm so sorry. We have to go.
We have to go!
We have to go."
Yes!
I'm mustering my best accent here. Randy was undeterred. "Your number, give me your number." Well, this is like an entire play.
This is so good.
Well, this was before mobile phones, and so anyway, without thinking, I gave him my home phone number. 3 hours later, which must make it like 4 or 5 in the morning or something like that, the phone rang.
I wonder who it could be. Is it Randy? I hope so.
"Hey, girl,
Oh, hey, girl.
I've been thinking about you." And so it began, Randy calling me, and I was speaking to him in the worst French accent you have ever heard. Oh, well, I got that right. Eventually, I agreed to meet him again, and I quite liked him. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to come clean, but I felt I was in too deep. So before long, I had built up a whole backstory. I came from the town I had luckily been to on a French exchange some years earlier, and my sister was called Emily. But we'd lost touch since I moved to England. Under a cloud. Sous le cloud.
Oh, very good. Very much.
It didn't put Randy off, though. I kept talking and meeting him for 8 months.
8 months.
8 months of using a fake accent and a fake name. I should add at this time, when he asked me what my name was, the only French name that came to mind was Marie-France.
Of course.
From the 80s textbooks about Marie-France and the facteur.
Monsieur Lafayette.
That's the one.
Où est la bibliothèque?
Lying to Randy was tearing me apart, Father Simon. Well, a little bit. I quite liked Marie-France. But one night, fate stopped me, having to tell Randy the truth. Jackie and I had arranged to go out closer to home. We were drinking and dancing when I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Randy, and he looked devastated. He'd been standing behind me listening to me talk to my friends in my very broad English accent for at least 5 minutes, and he couldn't believe his ears. "You're not French?" he said. "No," I replied, suitably shamed. He walked off, and I never heard from Randy again. After a couple of months of being miserable, I left my boring bank job, became a teacher of languages, and after spending 4 years in France, can actually speak French with a better French accent now. I even married a Frenchman. How about that?
Okay.
Father Simon, I would like to ask forgiveness for my French deception to Randy. He was a top bloke, and who knows what could have happened if I'd just been English from the start. I also like forgiveness from Jackie, who also had to keep up her French accent, if only for one night. And I'd also like to seek forgiveness from France.
Yeah, all of it, yeah.
For forging a terrible accent to be one of them. So please forgive me, France, is how Mila, let's call the whole thing off. Signs off that particular tale from the dance floor. Sister Bobby.
Mila, well, France will forgive you just for, keeping going with it. At least you gave it a go. I'd be rubbish. I'd have lasted about as long as Simon.
Imagine that being rubbish.
Yeah, there you go. What I can't forgive you for is lying in love, because Randy didn't deserve it. Yes, but their boys are smelly, and lots of them are very bad, but that might have been one good one that you ruined, you see, because that's it. You can't fix the last one with the new one. That's the advice. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think so. I know what you
So, Mila, you lied about love, and you can't do that, I think. So, unforgiven.
Lessons in love. I think Level 42
Isn't it?
told us so much, didn't they?
Isn't
What
it
did you say,
though?
Brother Matthew?
I mean, I'm going to forgive here, and the reason, number one, any confession that involves you having to do that many accents,
Oh, it was a little bit unfair.
It was superb. No, I love that, and the fact that she had that's a degree of commitment there. I'm going to keep doing this accent, not for one night. I'm going to do it for 8 months. 8 months of talking like this the whole time. Really? Goodness me. Well, and then you decide to go go and live in France. It's almost as if you were living it. You were living this lie, and then it was no longer a lie. It was your life. So for that reason, I go to forgive.
Simon Mayo's Confessions podcast.
That was Mia's faux pas, Let's Face the Music in France, title of the week. And that concludes this week's batch of Confessions. Maybe it has inspired you to send... Did you hear a noise then?
That was me, sorry.
What was it?
It was something going through my... It was air going through my lips.
Do that again?
Do it again.
I don't think I could do it on demand.
It's like he's blowing kisses.
It was a little. Hello.
Not on me.
Maybe it inspired you to send in your own little dark secret, Simon Mayo. No, it's Confessions.
Give out your own email, that'd be great.
Little dark secret to share. Confessions@bbc.co.uk. Before we leave you, another treat from the Confession script. This week has been requested by Amy, Elissa, Sue, Martin and Sophie. Apparently Matt thinks it might be one of the best of all time.
This is the best one we've ever done.
Why?
It's because you think, right, that's it can't possibly get worse, and then it does. It's so good. I almost did myself an injury listening to
Here
this.
it is one more time. This confession is called On the Fly.
The Confessions podcast.
Dear Father Simon and the Unvindictive Collective, having recently heard the confession of the young man who ruptured his gusset during an interview...
That makes it sound painful, doesn't it?
Well, it does, but it was, it was quite a fun tale, that was. I was prompted, says John, to share a similar tale of a business trip to Amsterdam.
Oh, yes, already this is a good one.
There are a few confessions which start like that and they never get further than the in-tray. As a 3-day visit to see a client loomed, and having more than a plentiful experience of small city airports and budget airlines, I resolved to travel in this instance with hand luggage only. This would take some doing, as my work laptop alone was about the size of a well-known celebrity-endorsed grilling device. I spent a good deal of my Sunday deciding on the essentials and what I could practically do without. I decided that I could accomplish this trip with but a single pair of trousers. I carefully selected a stout and rugged pair, which were both semi-smart but also casual, the sort of thing that Bear Grylls might wear while giving lecture tours. Really? Okay, if you say so, John.
Pretty specific, that, really, isn't it?
It is.
Not when he's out on the outside, it's when he's giving the lecture tours.
Do you have any trousers, please? I'd like the kind that Bear Grylls might wear if he's going to go on a lecture tour. The trousers were suitable for hanging around in airports, says John, squashing up on the plane, striding the streets of Amsterdam, and most importantly, standing up in front of a major international client and providing a comprehensive and professional training session. On arriving at my hotel, I showered and dressed to go forth and explore. This was one of those hotels that had neither room service or indeed a restaurant. As I put on my trousers, I felt a peculiar grating around the crotch area. And haven't got going, really.
I love the way that makes you laugh.
And realised to my horror that the zipper had given way. Perhaps Bear Grylls would not have selected these trousers after all.
This is great. Oh, yes.
It's a West End farce already. I panicked and phoned my wife, who, while sympathetic to my plight, was unable to offer any resistance.
What's she going to do? She's back home. This is brilliant.
Well, she might be able to explain, I know, emergency needle care, I don't know. Having noted that the welcome card in the hotel room advised that sewing kits were available from reception, I ventured gingerly downstairs to acquire one. Eventually a sewing kit was produced, much like the sort of thing that you might have the misfortune to find in an economy Christmas cracker. As luck would have it, it contained a number of safety pins. As such, I was able to secure myself adequately to venture out and find something to eat.
He's still going out. He's insisting I must go out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I must go out, even though.
Why can't he just buy some new trousers, for goodness sake?
Exactly.
He addresses that shortly. Whilst exploring the city, I also kept my eye open for some more robust safety pins. But although I found many colourful and interesting things for sale, safety pins did not seem to feature high on the agenda. Ask your parents. On returning to the hotel, I was dismayed to see that my cheapo safety pins had given way, and that I had come dangerously close to an international incident affecting the good people of Amsterdam. Worse, this is where it gets difficult. The twisted remains of the safety pins had tangled themselves into the fabric of my trousers, making them impossible to remove. So now they'd become my pyjamas.
What, the trousers or the safety pins?
The trousers.
Okay.
Yes.
He can't get the trousers off
No.
now.
So now they've become my pyjamas. Sleeping was tricky as I kept lying on a sharp-pointed piece of wire.
Well, how can he go to the loo?
We addressed that point as well.
Okay.
The next morning, trousers were now truly crumpled. There was no alternative but to sew the fly shut with the remains of the sewing kit. Not being a seamstress, threading a needle at 7 in the morning wasn't a simple exercise, particularly as I was still wearing the trousers. Extreme care was needed. As luck would have it, as part of my space-saving initiative, I had opted for polo shirts as opposed to dress shirts, which went some way, but not all the way, to concealing the problem. I reasoned that I would have to sew the fly about halfway shut. This took some doing, but the finished result, while ugly, was solid and dependable, a bit like Stoke City, says John, which is not a bad gag, really. The problem, then, was the fact that I now had trousers which were essentially welded to my body. Going to the toilet was a huge deal. It was a battle, and a battle that was repeated over the next few days every time nature called. I spent so long locked in a cubicle, everyone thought I had dysentery. I did consider buying some new ones, see?
Yeah.
But they were very expensive, so instead found a way at last to ease my delicately soft body over the metallic obstacle course that my trousers had become. They took 30 minutes to get off and 20 to get back on again. Plasters at the ready. With my polo shirts hanging out, I managed to get through the 3 days of training without, I think, hanging out myself and upsetting the nice ladies from the finance department. But this wasn't the end of the story. As I returned to Amsterdam Airport for the flight home, I approached security with my jet-setting know-how, effortlessly removing my watch, belt, car keys, whipping my laptop and liquid items from my hand luggage. I then stood and tutted with the rest about those who were less in the know as the queue wound forward. Approaching the security barrier, and this was one of those things like an upright MRI scanner as opposed to a simple metal detector, it occurred to me that I had a large number of sharp metallic objects protruding from my groin, the remains of the safety pins that were impossible to remove. Given the heightened nature of airport security at the time, I started to sweat badly at this point. Visions of security personnel pointing and probing at my nethers before the shuffling crowd grew in my mind. By the time I got to security, I was in such a blind panic. It was a miracle that I made it through it all. I decided to tell the truth, and I told the man that I had many pins in my pants. And explained what...
Sending Matt over the edge.
And explained
doctor.
What had happened. I've got to get this next sentence out. Okay. Stop. I offered him a look. But he was laughing too hard at this point. He ran his metal scanner over my groin to confirm my story, laughed again, and sent me through. So I would seek forgiveness from the lovely ladies at the finance department who were blissfully unaware that they were but a polo shirt away from a full-blown harassment incident, and also to the security staff at the airport who came dangerously close to investigating something which may have required tetanus jabs. But they had a laugh anyway. You may be pleased to hear that the following visit I went to a seamstress, and the trousers are now properly recovered. Just buy some new ones next time. It's very easy. They're about, 15 quid or 20 quid or something? Splash out, 30 quid. Get 2 pairs. Well, thank you, John. Got through it in the end. Sister Rebecca.
So he's still got these trousers. I mean, he's had them mended. Even though he had safety pins stuck in them, he had to sew them up himself a couple of times, and he was welded to them
Waste
for a few
not,
days.
want not. These are
Waste
tough
not,
times.
No, absolutely. But I'm sure he could have just bought a new pair of trousers, really. You know, maybe for £10, rather than go through this charade. And the thing at the airport. I mean, that was quite funny, actually, the bit at the airport. But I think the ladies in the finance department didn't even know anything was up, did they? So they weren't harmed.
No, they weren't
the guys
harmed,
at the airport were fine. So no harm done. John, you are forgiven.
Yeah, no, I think everyone seemed to have quite a good time apart from John. Brother Matt.
That is superb, isn't it? Let's be honest, the security people at Amsterdam Airport have seen far worse than that, I'm going to say, of people
right.
leaving Amsterdam with pins in their pants. What a line that is. If you put "I had pins in my pants" into any confession, you're always going to get forgiven. We're definitely going to... I mean, he's a little bit tight-fisted with he won't shell out for a new pair of pants. But the fact that he's kept them, well done, sir, for keeping them. But it's obviously a conversation piece. When things start going dull at dinner, then you can always whip out those pants and tell them about the story about me having pins in my pants. So I'm going to forgive, because I know it's really brightened my day.
Simon Mayo's Confessions Podcast.
And that was our confession from the crypt this week, starring Rebecca Pike.
Yes, there she is.
and Matt.
And me. There I am.
As well. Rebecca, eh?
Yeah,
Rebecca.
there she is.
Hey, Rebecca. Hey. That was Rebecca, and it was Matt performing that. It was a very, very good story.
Yes, it was.
And worth digging. I'd completely forgotten about that.
Okay, I love that one.
Thank you for suggesting that. If you want to suggest one, just send us an email. We'll try and dig it out of the crypt. Sister Bobby, you forgave one person this week. Takes your yearly tally to 8.5 forgivenesses. It says 9.5 not forgivenesses. Matt, you forgave everyone again.
Hey, clean sweep.
Nod them through.
Yes.
That takes you to 18 forgives and one not. It's like it's all over for the year. As far as you are you just on a particularly?
It's like Manchester City for the forgives.
You'll have to explain that.
Will I?
No, you probably
no.
If you've got something to tell us, confessions@bbc.co.uk. If you made it to the end of the last podcast, you had to tweet, "I'm sorry, but I'm going to run over you now." Thanks to Kate, who gets the sticker, Louise, Andrew, Anita, Nick, Andy, and loads more did just that. This week's top code phrase is #sort it out, Bobby. Remember to subscribe to the podcast, and don't forget you can hear our whole radio show live every weekday from 5 on BBC Radio 2.
The Confessions Podcast. Go in peace.